The following is a conversation and idea that came up in last night's post-game show. As you likely know, Bradley Beal's 1 week away from his return, barring any setbacks. Hit that like for us, and please, after hearing Gary's idea that Romp and I completely agree with, let us know if we cooked, or if our brains are cooked. But first, this video is brought to you by our friends at BetUS. Lately, I've been playing a lot of blackjack because not only can you bet on a lot of different sports here, you can play casino games whenever you want. Use our link in the description and BetUS will match you with a 125% bonus. Let's win some money on the Suns this season, whether or not they win or lose. Shout out to BetUS.
Especially with Beal being fragile and obviously he's not going to be in any type of rhythm. Scrap the big three idea. What if Beal's your main guy of your, I don't want to say bench, but like your KD
like Manu Ginobili.
Exactly. But it's like the shooters that you have, like Yuta didn't play, but like say you get him going, say you get Gordon going, you get Grayson Allen going, you get any combination of Metu or Diop or any of these guys, and those guys you don't need at all. They're there in case whatever. They're extra. You know what I mean? They're icing on top. You've still got Book and KD doing the bulk of the work. Like you're saying, there's one ball. Okay, Beal, we're going to, especially coming back from injury, you're going to come off the bench. We're going to manage your minutes. And you're going to be the main guy in that second rotation. And we're going to be able to use you as the guy that brings the ball up, that the offense runs through. Yeah. And we're going to start getting all these other guys that Grayson Allen is playing more and having more responsibility than he ever would if those three were all healthy going through the season. The same thing with Yuta when he was in there, a lot of it with Gordon. Like there's variations that you'll get when those three are all healthy together to where throughout the whole duration of the game, you've got an unstoppable offense no matter what rotation you've got in there. And then, yeah, you're going to have your one weakness teams and critics and everybody else is going to be able to point to is the defense. But again, if you don't have those lulls where you're not able to drop insane amounts of points on teams, who cares? Nobody can keep up with you guys scoring.
I really like Beal off the bench idea because I don't know if he would buy into that.
I think you could get him to buy in. It's like nobody's telling you you're not starter worthy. You could start on 28 different teams in this league. What we're talking about is being able to completely rely on you when you're out there and not be putting a hat on a hat on a hat.
Dude wants to win. He wants his money, which he's got, and he wanted to go to a contender. He got all those things, and he doesn't seem too worried about playing because he's constantly hurt no matter where he's at. So, like, the sell job the Vogel and them go to him with is like, there's two ways. Like, we're going to bring you off the bench to ease you into it, but we want you to score, be the guy. You're not going to score all the time and be the guy, be the primary focal point of the offense when you're in there with Book and KD. It's just not going to happen. So like you said, sell it to him like you're going to be the Ginobili guy on this team. You'll be in with them at the end of games and shit like that. Don't get me wrong. But you're going to be basically the head of all the role players and everything's going to run through you. So he's probably going to get more touches and more shots than either Durant or
he
Booker,
could average
depending
25
on the
a
night.
game easy.
He could still get all of his points. He's not playing that many minutes. It's easier on his body. He's still got his bag. He's still on a team that now is even more dangerous going forward and more likely to get a ring. Like, I don't think it'd be that tough of a sell job. I think initially, yeah, it'd be tough because these guys all got egos, but it's like, dude, you're not playing now. You're not helping the team at all now.
The reality is he's making $46.7 million a year. You got to
front office wants a ring.
You're going up to Bradley Beal, and who's going to start over him? Grayson Allen. It's easier said than done, like selling it to him, because the risk of selling it to him and him taking it badly is it really worth it?
Yeah, because what do you have to lose? You haven't had him all year. You're paying him that $46.6 million for him to not even put a jersey on. I'm sure as hell fine paying him $46.6 to play 20-some minutes.
I'm giving him 30 plus minutes a game. Like you said, he's always in there when it matters. He's there to close out the games, to close out quarters. It's not like it's like a hybrid role where because of our abundance of scoring in the lineup as is, it would be better if we spread it more evenly throughout the bench. Hey, I agree with Romp though too. Like Romp, you made a great point. Like that's a big risk. What if he
I agree. I yeah, right. As soon as he said that, I'm like, yeah, dude, that's for sure the tough part about it. But at the same time, if I'm Vogel or whoever, I'm going to go to him and be like, okay, dude, do you want to be the third option right off the start with these guys so that you can have the title of starter? Or do you want to be the number one option the majority of the time you're on the court and still get basically starter minutes?
If you look at the NBA, like, this stuff just doesn't happen. Like, we can talk about it. Like, as fans, it makes way more sense. But, like, in the locker room, I feel like the atmosphere is, Katie, you're the guy. Bradley Beal, you're our guy. D-Book.
Mm-hmm.
And to be like, go to the bench, it just, if it was the Miami Heat or the Spurs back in the day, but like with the Suns, how they have kind of, with Matt Ishbia, kind of accepted this super team deal, it just doesn't seem likely to me, if that makes sense.
I know what you're saying, but Ginobili during that Spurs run would have started on every single team, including the Spurs. He was better than everybody. He was probably better than Parker. He just wasn't as critical position-wise. He was better than everybody on those teams except for Duncan, and that's a huge part of the reason why they won. People are like, dude, they're taking all these guys that nobody wanted or they drafted late and they're winning titles with them. It's not because they had this magic wand where they were making these average or below average players great. They spaced it out so they always had, essentially for San Antonio wise at least, star players constantly going no matter who was in or who was out. So it's like you can go back to that. You can, however you got to try and sell it to him. I agree with you, Romp. I don't think it's an easy sell job, and I wouldn't be surprised if there is some kind. I don't know enough about Bradley Beal to know his personality, if he's gonna throw a tantrum or do whatever if it came up. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he did. I'm just saying, if your number one concern is winning a title with that roster you have, which it seemed like it was in the offseason, that's your next big focal point. Not go get this guy or go get this guy. I think you're done getting guys. I think you've got more than what you need talent-wise to win a title. You've just got to get it gelled together, understand your rotations, and do what's going to make the most sense. Like you're saying, you don't have a guy out there being wasted depending on the night, which two are going off and getting the bulk of the shots and the other one's just kind of along for the ride, getting garbage time essentially because he's just out there so he can still claim starter status, as opposed to spacing out the minutes to where you've constantly got at least one of those guys at a time, and then in crunch time all of them, and you always have a superstar on the court. Like to me, that's a no-brainer from a front office coaching standpoint, not just a fan or an outsider or whatever else. But again, saying all that, I agree 1,000%. It's a tough sell to the Stars.
How many titles did the Spurs win running a system like that?
They won 5. I think 4 of them were with Ginobili.
We're just looking to get one
Maybe
here.
3 or
I'm
4.
willing. I'm willing to try it. I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's probably the best idea you've ever had in your whole life.
But I mean, you look at like the Warriors run when Iguodala was kind of that 6-man type of deal. I know he started some or whatever, but I mean, to Rom's point, there's only one basketball. So it's like, I think that was a big problem that he had. I think they could have won every single year, but it was like, you got 3 heavily offensive guys. At least they weren't exactly the same positions, but I don't know, man, when you go across and you look at Bruce Brown last year, coming off the bench and how good he was throughout and helped them in a lot of those different series and things like that. Like you typically have that. And until you either find somebody else on that roster to do it, the amount of money you're paying those 3, you probably don't really have one. You got to figure out who that next man up is going to be so that those other minimal contract or pieces that were thrown in trades that can be helpful can actually be helpful. And it's not like, well, this guy's a spot up shooter. This guy is, a decent on ball defender as far as coming off the bench. This guy, everybody has their different things, but it's like, but we don't have a guy that can really run the offense or that we can rely on for scoring. We need you to all of a sudden be able to do this thing you've never been able to do, which is why we got you so cheap. I feel like that's what they're doing now with the injuries, is they're trying to get guys in the starting rotation, and they're kind of having to depend and rely on them to do things that they don't do. That's why they're not on the teams that drafted them or the teams they had their initial contract with or whatever, and they were able to get them as throw-in pieces for a trade or really cheap off of the free agency market.